Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new session with Code with Sally. The session used to be every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. We switched it to be 12 p.m. Eastern time. Hopefully that will work with a bigger crowd. And anyone who's missing the previous sessions, you can find on YouTube, the channel for Code with Sally. We have a playlist for the English and another playlist for the Arabic. And this session is the last session for 2024. We'll be on break until we'll resume again on the January the 16th. So from here till January the 16th, if you missed any sessions, I would encourage you to watch it because the purpose of the session is to build into small pieces. So we start with the smaller or simpler concept, and every time we increment. Today's session will resume our talk and discussion about Apex triggers. Apex triggers, as we discussed last time, it's one of the most important or ways to invoke Apex. We'll try to cover as many as we can, like invocation type and different ways to invoke Apex, but our focus now is on the triggers. And last time we explained about what's the trigger, what's the purpose of the trigger, and we explained together as well that there is different events that the trigger will be listening to. Some of them are like insert, update, upsert, delete, and there is a before and after. And we started an exercise together last time where we started writing a trigger together. I give the requirement and I ask the attendees to tell me is it before or after, is it an insert or update, and so on. So I want to continue that and just a highlight again, as we are talking, we start small and we add to the concepts we are covering. So for now, which is not a good practice, and we'll learn today how to overcome that, we are writing all the logic in the trigger. And this is for anyone who's watching or watched the previous session, you keep me hearing, this is not a good practice, but we have to start somewhere and then see the bad and learn from it that it's not good and then go to the next. So the new requirement, like we covered last time, some requirements that required before insert, after insert, and before update. I will keep adding here another requirement, and I want someone to volunteer and tell me, would it be before or after insert? Will the logic will be added to the before insert, after insert? Do we need before, delete, etc.? So we want to figure out which type of trigger we want to use or event. So whenever an account revenue is updated, if the value is greater than this big number, notify the account owner by creating a task to review the account. So this is the requirement we have. So any volunteer to tell me, is it before or after, and which event we will be trying to implement here? Femi, you were with me last time, so maybe you can start volunteering.
Okay, this is an after event.
After event, okay. And is it after insert, after delete?
Is after update.
After update, exactly. So it's very important, and the reason why I'm doing this because whenever you are working on a project, you'll get a requirement of a certain action or certain behavior you want to implement in a trigger. And it's very important to know, am I working with a before or an after, and which type of event? So that's why we are doing this practice together. And as Fimi said, here, the request is after an account value, annual revenue is updated. And if the value is greater than a certain amount, I want to create a task for the account owner to review it. The reason why we chose after here, and it's very important to understand that, is because what if, for example, I send or create a task and the update for any reason failed. There is a validation rule in place that will stop the execution of code. In that case, the task got created, but the update actually failed. So in such scenarios, it's very important to know that you want to do the action once the event happened and got committed. So you want to make sure that first the annual revenue got updated, and then you check the value and see if it's greater than certain amount you updated or create the task. I put the code for you here. So here last time we had a if for a before, and then we were checking the insert and then else for the update. Here we want to do the same. So we have, I want to do like my trigger is an after, and then I have to check. We had a logic because we had before, after insert only, we didn't have anything else. So I want to make sure my logic that I had before will be executed only for the insert. And then I will add here another else statement in the after to handle the after update. And then I will add my logic in between. I'll get the code after that and add it and just creating a task. So, but at least for now, we know that the logic is after update. Another one, like if I want to do something to check, for example, do I want to prevent a record to be being deleted if it has tasks open or something. That will tell me as well, like that I want to go with a before delete in that case. Also, some requirements you can get, like you want to, for example, someone deleted an account and they want to restore it from the recycle bin. In that case, you want to work with after undelete. That means like you want to notify the account or some manager in the org that someone restored an account from the recycle bin and you want to modify it. So it's very important to be like mindful about the logic that you can have with all of that. Also, something else, like last time, I want to touch base again on it. We discussed like together the Upsert. In the Upsert, we said like if the account or a record we are trying to upsert does not exist, it will behave as an insert. And if, for example, if it's already existing, it will behave as update. So let's take a look here. I will do here a debug statement. Sorry, in the execute anonymous, I will try for you to create a new account using an Upsert. So I will do here an account. I created a new object of the account. I give it a name, and let's make it here unique, as today is 19th of December. So I know it doesn't exist, and then I do an Upsert. The Upsert here, because the account does not exist and it doesn't have an ID. So in that case, it will behave as an insert. And we have here in our triggers, we have here before insert, after insert. And one thing I forgot to do, when we did the logic for the after update, you have to add it here in the trigger so it works without issues. Here, if I do the account, for me, it will act as insert. So for the insert, we have here in the before insert, there is an error here. Let me, okay, yeah, I have an extra S. So with the before insert, we were checking if the industry is empty, we'll set it to technology. So let's try this and let me add in the debug statement the account ID. And I will do like that. And I will say here account.id. So we can go and check the record and see if the industry got updated as expected or not. So let me execute it here. And I go to debug. and we have the account ID added. So let's see the account and see the industry, if it got updated to technology as expected or not. So if I go to the details for the account, we'll find that the industry now is set to technology. So the Upsert, because last time, if like you didn't watch the previous video, like we were talking about some actions that will behave differently. Like we have the Upsert and the merge, they are special type of actions because you won't find us in the trigger writing before Upsert or after Upsert, or the same for merge. The Upsert can behave as insert or update, and the merge will behave as delete for the records that will be merged into the main record we are merging to, and the record that we are merging multiple records into will be an update. So that's why those are special, and I wanted to demonstrate that, for example, when you do an Upsert, it can behave as insert because in that case, we don't have the record in place. So that's just to give you an idea on how to think about the events and how you can think about like how to choose between them. I will get here the code for the whole requirement, like for every requirement we were talking about, including the undelete, including the before delete, and I put it here. And let me save. Okay. When I save, like it's just adding extra spaces, but it's okay. So here you will see the logic of my code, like because we are writing everything here, it's very hard to read, not just because of like writing the logic here, but we have a lot of if and else statements, like if it's update within the after insert, and we have like is before, and we are checking insert. Someone can write this as is before and is insert. So we'll have a lot of if and else statements. So that's something that makes the code hard to read. And I will share, I don't think I can share this in the chat here because it will be huge. I put it in the Slack chat so you can have a look into the logic of the requirements we were talking about between last time and today. The main focus we want to check on, and like the rest of the requirements, the ones that we touched base quickly on them today were mainly a homework from last session. So hopefully, like if you didn't attend last time or you didn't do it, maybe you can think about it again and try to implement it and see it and test it and see if it's working. If you need any help, let me know. But the main focus, what we want to discuss today, is that we want to make our triggers better and looks better, and the implementation is nicer. So one thing we want to start looking or using would be using and simplifying the triggers with switch cases. The problem we have now, we have like too many if and else statements. It makes the code harder to read and maintain. And that's not only with triggers, like switch cases, like we discussed it before in a previous session in details, and how to use it and how to work with it when we were discussing the if and else statements and how to implement those. So the problem is with a lot of if and else statements, sometimes the logic gets like crowded and it's hard to follow. So what we want to do is simplify the logic we have for the if and else statements and switch that into switch cases. Switch cases will be working with a new trigger variable. Like when we talked about this last time, we saw together we have the old, we have the new map, and we try together the is update, is delete, is before. So there is another variable that you can use, which is the operation type. So we'll use the operation type today to simplify the trigger logic and replace the many if and else statements into that. And that will help the code to be more readable and to be more organized. So let me go here and show you how we can do it. So the switch case, like usually you have like keyword for switch, and then you say on to tell the switch case what am I checking or what I'm working with here. So here we are working, or the variable that we are working with, and we want to check its value instead of using else and if. We will be the trigger dot operation type. And again, you don't need to memorize the values. If you go here to the documentation, and then I want to and encourage you to get used to reading Salesforce documentation, you'll find here we have operation types. It tells you it return an enumerator like specific fixed values that you cannot get out of it. There is an article on Code with Sally talking about enumerators in details. We didn't discuss it in the live sessions, but feel free to check it. And if you need, I can point you to the URL for the article if you want. But it tells you that the available values for this enumerator are before insert, before update, and so on. So what we will be doing is that we will say like when, and we start with the first value. The first value can be before insert. So if there is something before insert, I want to, if the value of the operation type is before insert, I want to do some logic. Then it will have another when, after insert, do something else. And we'll keep adding to it. I can get the code for you here so we can go through it, and it will be faster than typing it all here. So here what we did again, sorry, this is for here. I copied and replaced the trigger, but we want to keep the trigger definition, which state like which operations we are covering. So let's go here. So we have the switch. We are doing the switch for the operation. So we'll have here, that's what you want to do with when it's before insert. So the logic we had the same for the technology and setting the technology became between the curly brackets of the before insert. Then again, for the after insert, we have the logic here. We are defining the task that we want to create, and we created the task. So it's within the after insert in the switch case. So that's make it like more organized, and it's more readable because you don't have the nested if and else. We have another one for the before update. Again, the same logic we had to give an error before the update if it doesn't work. The same for the after update. We wanted to have after update and check if the annual revenue got updated. We create a task. So within we do a when for each value before the delete. We check if we can delete or if it have like any opportunities. Then we don't, we add an error and we cannot delete. After undelete, like when you do the undelete, we can create the task. I believe I have an extra here. So that's the main logic of the concept of using the switch case. Is that the best practice, or what we are doing now is enough to say that we have a good trigger? The answer is no. And why I'm saying it's no because we have still the logic in the trigger. I will pause here. Anyone has a question so far about what we covered, or any questions related to what we may have covered in the previous session and you missed? Okay, I don't.
I was curious about the before versus the after for the create task. You're saying if you had that in the before update, it would create the task even if there was an issue saving the record,
Yes.
which you don't want. Okay.
So what it's something very important we covered last time. Let me go to the slide quickly. There is, before the trigger events, we had like what's the trigger types we want to cover. So there is a before, and you have to think about it as like a flowchart or a decision tree in your head. You have either before or after. You have to think about your changes where it fits. So for the before, usually we'll go for that for validation. For example, if you want to validate that I can update the annual revenue, you won't do this in the after, because if you do it in the after, that means your change got committed to the org already and the annual revenue got updated. So you want to do the validation to see if I'm okay to commit the change and the change to the annual revenue, or I have to add an error and stop the user from doing that. So validation will go for before. Also, modifying the data. Like if you want to modify, like if, for example, you get an account with an annual revenue got updated to 2 million and it's above a certain threshold, 10,000, then you want to flag this account to be VIP, for example. So you want to modify it. So the record will be read only in the after, but you can write in the same trigger in the same record or modify the values of the same record in the before. So that will take you to the before. With the after is whenever you want to perform an action after the data is saved or committed to the org. So for example, if I want to create a task for the account owner to check the account because the value got updated to a huge number, that will be in the after, because you want to create the task only if the record got saved. For example, what can stop the record from being saved? You can have a validation that tells you if the amount is greater than 10,000, give an error. So it can be a validation. It can be an error, for example, in Apex code that will, and you have a transaction set. And whenever there is an error in your catch, you do a rollback. So the data was saved, but you roll back the change, so it's not committed. And it can be a flow. So there is a lot of things that out of your control maybe can result for the record to be failed to be saved. So in that case, anything like any action you want to do, if the record got updated, if the record got inserted, if the record got deleted, most probably you'll do it in the after, because you want to make sure that your action got committed already and it's not rolled back or nothing stopped it from happening. If you do it in the before, you will create the task and then a validation rule stop you from updating, and the account owner will go see, I have a task to review it, but the value is still not changed and nothing got updated. So that's why like it's very important to keep that in mind. Another thing, like in your decision tree, you have to have it, like anything you want to do where you need to have the record ID. For example, you want to create a task and you want to relate it to the account. You cannot do it in before insert, because before insert, you don't have a record ID that you can work with. So in that case, you'll do it in the after. So that's why it's very important to think or to have something like this in mind and decide, yes, I want to go in before or after. And that's why last time we tried 3 requirements in depth, and today like we discussed one, and then we had the 2 examples for the delete before or after, to see how you can think about it. Is that clear? Or like, did I answer your question, or you have more questions?
No, you did. Yeah, I just didn't know that in the before update that it tried to execute before the validation. So yeah.
Yeah, the main thing is that in the after, the record change got committed. So it happened and saved and everything. There is a lot of like order of execution that I find it hard for me to remember. It's documented in Salesforce. It tells you that the order of operations, how it happens. And a lot of things can happen in between before the record gets committed in the database. So that's why, like, if you want to make sure your action got committed, do it in the after. Any other questions? Okay, so now we reach to the point that we have something that is a bit better, and we have the switch case. And again, the switch case is something that you can use even beyond the triggers whenever you have an if and else, and if you remember when we discussed it, we said it's mainly when you are checking if and else for a specific one value. So here, all what we are checking is the operation type. Is it before insert, after insert, before update, and so on. So we are checking only one value, which is operation type. So the switch case made it a bit better, but again, until now, we don't have the best practice, or what I would say, like, it's a good way to write triggers. And the reason why, because here now, if you open the trigger, first of all, I don't have comments. I encourage everyone to write comments, because comments serves as internal documentation for your code. So it helps other developers understand what you are trying to do, instead of, okay, thinking, yeah, it seems that they want to create a task. Like, if you have a simple text at the top explaining what you're trying to do, that will be better. But again, having everything here in one go and in one big chunk of code, that's not recommended, and it's not a good practice to work with. So what's the good practice then? The good practice, and something that we like encourage you to do, is using trigger handlers. Trigger handlers, what is trigger handler? Trigger handler is an Apex class that you would create, and you will put the logic of the actions that you want to do in the class, and then you will call it from the trigger. So the trigger won't have any logic. It will be just calling methods. And the trigger handlers, I'd love to say that it's kind of similar to utility classes when we were talking about them. You will have the method as static methods that when we discuss static and non-static methods, we discussed that during the sessions of object-oriented. We said like static methods will be like accessed through the class, the prototype you have. But if you have non-static method, that means you have to create an object from your class and use it through the object. So here we have to create together like handler and see how we can move the logic from the trigger to the trigger handler, and how that will enhance the logic or the concept we have, or the behavior we have. The benefit of doing that, you will find that we are separating the logic. Like, the trigger is doing, like, calling one method. This method can be long, can be calling another helper method, can be doing a lot of things, but the trigger doesn't know exactly what it does. So it decoupled together. Like, if, for example, you have different developers working together, someone can create the handler and someone can create the trigger and call the main method of the handler, and then another developer will take the implementation of each method and work on it separately. So it can help when you are splitting the work together. And you will see when we do it, it will be easier to maintain the code because it's cleaner, and it will be easier in the future. Like, for example, here, if I tell you I want to do another logic, like in the before insert, I want to check the annual revenue, if it's a huge amount when we are inserting market as VIP. Now I have to look into, like, okay, I have this logic and I have to add something here. If it's before or after update, I have to scroll down a lot and find the right spot where I want to do the change. And sometimes as well, you have, for example, the same logic you want to check, like I want to check that no one is exceeding 2 million in the annual revenue in the insert and update. The way I have it now, like you would be doing or adding the check and the validation and the add error twice, once in the before insert logic we have here, and second time in the before update. And again, you always hear me telling you, if you want to repeat your code more than once in more than one spot, that means you have something wrong and you have to change it, because we don't want to repeat the code more than once. Why? The reason is because if you want to change the code to do something else in the future, or to add a certain check or add something extra, that means you will have to change it in 2 spots. And that's not a good practice. So let's move on together and see how we can write the trigger handler. I will still use today the developer console. Some people prefer it here, but very soon when we finish the beginner class, we'll stick to the Visual Studio Code. So here I will, again, it's preference. You can name it the way you want. For me, I love to name it, like I love to name my triggers, the object name, trigger, and the same with the handler. I like to name it account trigger and then add handler at the end. So I know that they are related and it's easy for me to spell. So what we'll do here, we'll try first adding a handler for the before insert. So the before insert, we know that we are working with the trigger.new. And trigger.new, if you remember when we were discussing the context variables of triggers last time, we said it's a list of the S object you are working with. It can be a list of trigger, list of opportunity, and so on. So I will go here and create my list, my method. So I will have, this is the signature of my method. I named the handle before insert. Again, the name is up to you. This is the way I like to name it. And we'll have, it takes parameters as a list of accounts. I name it new account. So it's like, I prefer even to name it like that, list of new accounts. So I prefer to have a prefix, LST, and then new accounts. So it's easy when I have the old and new to separate the two from each other. But here, what we can do is just go here and take the logic we had and put it in our method here. And instead of looping on the trigger.new, we don't have this in place now. Even if I try to save, it will give you an error. It doesn't know what is this variable, like loop variable type expected as object account, but it doesn't know what is that because the trigger.new is a context variable specific when you're writing within the trigger. So here instead, I will use the list of new accounts. So it's the same logic we had from there. We moved it to the method here. Another thing I like to do is, for me personally, I don't even like writing the logic we have here. What I would do is, in another step is I would do private void, and I would name it what's the action we are trying to do here. So, for example, set initial industry value. Industry. For example, I'm setting the initial value for the industry, and I can pass to it a list of accounts and move the logic here. So I can have a private. Private means no one else outside of this class can use it. And we discussed that as well when we were talking about encapsulation and object-oriented. So if you missed that, you can watch or ask me if you have questions. So what we'll do here is set initial industry, and I pass here the list of accounts. Why I'm doing that? The reason why I'm doing that is that today, the only requirement I have is setting the industry account, industry value to technology. But tomorrow, maybe I have another requirement. So I don't need to change the logic or touch the logic for the industry. Maybe I will just here set priority. And I can pass the list of account and have another private method that sets the priority. And I can have here another method that sets the priority of the account. And I will have another method. That's what I would do, for example, if I have an extra logic that I want to add, I can call another method. So if I want to know for now, like what are we doing before inserting an account, it's easy for me, especially if we add comments. We'll see, okay, I want to set the initial industry value and I set the priority, so it's easy to split it. That's one reason. The second reason, maybe I want to do the same logic of the industry. For example, if when they updated, they cleared the industry, and I want to set it again to technology for by default. In that case, in the before update, I can call set initial industry value as well. Like it helps me reuse the code if needed in multiple methods, and at the same time, if different events needed. And in that case, what we will do, like we move the logic here. What we'll do is that we can go to the before insert, remove this code, and instead of that, we have the account trigger handler. We'll do account trigger handler dot, and then we'll do set handle before insert, sorry. And we are calling the public static method in that case. And here, what we'll pass is we'll be passing trigger dot new, because we saw together the trigger dot new is a list of the S object. So in that case, I want to pass the list of new accounts we are just inserting. So in that case here, that's what we will be doing. Handle before insert, it takes the list of new account, and then within that, we are calling set industry, set priority. It does the logic that we want, and we can access it from the trigger like that here. Did it forgot to make it static? Yes, sorry. So this one has to be static. And see the error it gave me when I forgot to define it as static. It says non-static methods cannot be referenced from a static context. So that means I cannot use a non-static method using the class name. I have to make it static. And again, that's something we discussed in details when we were talking about the object-oriented. And because this, I have two methods, the two methods as well. The private ones needs to be static because they are called from a static method. So here, now this is saved. If I go here and save that, I have it saved. What will happen is that when the trigger executes, it will come check the operation type. If it's before insert, all it does here and what we will have here in the trigger is that we are calling the method in the trigger handler to do the logic. Let's do after insert together, or let's choose another one. Let's do before update, for example, because the before update has the old map as well. So we want to see how we are doing that together. So this is before update. So let me get here. What we'll do here is that we'll create another public static method and handle before update. It can have a list of new accounts. And then I can name it here map old accounts. And we'll have also, we can have as well the list of old accounts. And the map of new accounts. I don't need to use all of those in my logic currently, but again, I'm writing a trigger handler that will be used along the way in the project. So in that case, I would say like when you are defining your method for handle before update, handle before insert, delete, and so on, put all the context variables that are available for this operation, because other people who are coming after you, they may need an extra one. You don't want to refactor or touch your trigger. So if, for example, now in my logic, I need the new list and the old map only, and I don't put the list of old and the map of new accounts, it won't cause an issue. But maybe in the future, if someone needs, for some reason, those context variables, it will cause an issue because your method doesn't support them or doesn't have them. That means you need to create another overload, and we don't want to do that. We want to call only one method in the trigger handler. So my advice is to add all of them. So even here, we can have the map. Like, for example, if I need to pass for any reason a map of new triggers, I cannot do that now with the method I have here. I have to create another one that takes a list of accounts and a map of accounts. So the best thing to do is to have like all the values that you can pass from the beginning. So map ID account and then map new accounts. It's future proofing. So if someone in the future wants to use the method here, I pass trigger dot new map. So it's future proofing for me. And that in the future, if someone wants to use the logic and they need the new map, they don't need to come to the trigger and change it because I'm passing all the context variable available for the before insert. And then I have it in the handler. Even if my methods now are using this one only, if someone needs the new map, they can create another method and pass the new map if they want to. So that's why here in the before update, I would add everything I may need. And again, what you would do is just go to the logic you have in the before update, you take a copy and put it in the, you can start even putting it here, and then you can move it to a method or directly move it in a separate method. Again, it's my preference to do the private methods and call them. Some people put it in the trigger handler, but again, for me, it's cleaner if you move it to a separate method at the end because it will be easier to read and easier to maintain. Here, the trigger.new will be replaced by the list of new accounts. What should I put instead of the trigger old map? Anyone?
Map old account.
Map old accounts. Yes, the map that hold the old values. So now I have the logic here, and here I can add a private method if I want. Private void check, for example, annual revenue or annual, check, validate annual revenue, validate annual revenue, for example. I can here pass to it. For this specific method, I can pass the list of new and the map of old accounts.
Static.
Yes, thank you. And I move this here, put it in the private method, and then I can call the validate method and give it the list of new accounts and the map of old accounts. Again, I may need to do this same check, for example, for another method. Like I won't say the insert because the insert you won't have the old, but like you may need it or you may have a logic or something that you are doing based on your requirement that may be needed to be called twice. So having it in private methods, you can call the private method in multiple function. And again, if someone wants to do something in before update again, they don't have to mix their code with yours. They can add another private method and write their logic there. So your logic and theirs is separate. If we have anything in place that require their method needs to be executed first, they would put it before the validate. So, and again, for me as a preference, I like to start here private method, comment, so I can know like those are the private methods that I have as a like comment section for me to separate the two. And again, what we'll do here is we go to the before update and I will do here trigger handler and I do dot, and in that case I do the dot handle before update and I pass the trigger dot new and I pass trigger what order do we have? The old dot old and trigger dot new map and trigger dot old map, even though my logic does not require all of that, but I'm doing that as future proofing. So if someone else in the future needs them, they can, it's already passed to the trigger handler. So they don't need to touch the trigger at all. They will be working only on their trigger handler. So again, by the time you will be doing the after insert, after delete, after undelete, it will look much cleaner because you will have only when before insert, do the handle before insert, before update, handle before update. So you won't have any logic. So it will be clean and easy to read. And when you go to the handler, you will have your logic again separated into methods. And within each handle, you can have multiple action, different developers adding different logic. You don't want to mix the two logic together, so you can have the private methods. So that's the idea of the trigger handler. There is more complicated ways to do the trigger handler and other concerns to take care of, like recursion of triggers, and sometimes as well, like people do interfaces for the trigger handler that people has to implement. So they make sure all the trigger handler follow the same structure. But for the purpose of the beginner class we are running, I will say that's good enough to start with in terms of trigger handlers. Move your logic to trigger handler. If you have handle before insert, after insert, and so on, pass all the context variables you may need. If you prefer to follow the same and do private methods for the logic, so if someone else needs to add your comments, I would say that would be good enough to start with. Any questions so far? I'm checking the chat. We are good in the chat. Okay, so let's move on to the next piece we have to cover here, and it will be like just revision, and that will be the end of the trigger handler, triggers and trigger handlers we want to cover with the beginner class. So there are some best practices we have to keep in mind, and some of them are not just for the triggers, and when you are writing triggers, it's in general, but we like to remind everyone with them so you have it with you. So first of all, like it's always recommended to have one trigger per object. And the reason why we do that is that it's easy to control the order of operation. Like if you have one trigger and you have only when before insert, you have the before insert. So I know when I go to the before insert, we said the code always execute from top to bottom. So the before insert will be executed. I know for sure that set initial industry will occur first and will be executed first before set priority. If I want to control that, for example, set priority happens first, I move the set priority to be line 4, and the set initial industry will be the second to be called. So it's easy to control the order of execution of the actions you want to do within the trigger handler when you have all your logic for the same trigger for the same object in one place. If you have multiple triggers, you won't have control over which one will be executed first. You may have issues, you may have like duplicated logic here and there. So it's better, or I won't say it's better, like it's a big no to have multiple triggers per object. Like it's one thing that we look into when we do code review, it's a big no. So keep one trigger per object. Using trigger handlers, as we saw, like it would be easier for maintenance. And by the way, like I would encourage you as a homework to take the logic that we had for the trigger, the ugly one, and convert it to trigger and trigger handler, and see how nicely with the having the switch cases the end result would be, because that would be good practice for you. If you want help or if you have questions, for sure, send me, and you can submit the homework as a gist link, and I will look into it. So yeah, move the logic into trigger handlers. Bulkification of your code. That means whenever you're working with triggers, you have to think and assume that maybe when you are inserting, you're not just inserting one trigger. It can be you are inserting 200 account at once. The problem is when we start working with triggers, we think always, okay, I'm going to a custom page or I'm going to the UI and clicking insert for one account. So when do I will create multiple? It can happen. It can happen that someone running and execute anonymous and they created the list of 20 accounts and they are trying to insert it. It can happen that someone is using a data loader and they are bringing in thousands of records of accounts. So your triggers needs to be bulkified and ready to work with multiple or more than one record and to be efficient. And we'll see and we'll touch base on that again when we are talking about unit test classes, and we'll see and we'll highlight it's very important when writing test class for triggers to cover the scenario of bulkification and bulk insert or bulk update for the records. One thing is to stay within the governor limits. It's very important to keep an eye on this link. Again, I don't memorize numbers, but like you have to know that they exist regardless of the number. Like you have a maximum number of records to be retrieved, 50,000, or you have a, for example, 100 so-called statement to be happening. So you have to keep in mind those limits and make sure you're not like writing more DML statements in for loop. Like someone can have a for loop where within the for loop they insert one case at a time instead of creating a list of cases and inserting all in bulk. So the governor limits is something you have to keep in mind and make your code again bulk, handle bugs and written in a good way. No for loops and no queries, so-called statements inside for loops, no DML statements within the for loops, so you don't hit the limit. Prevent recursion. This is something as well, best practice to keep in mind, but that's something I will keep it for the intermediate classes, and we'll talk about what is recursion and why it happens in triggers and how to stop it, or what's the problem of recursion and how we can make it good. In terms of like the bulkification or the queries and having DMLs within the for loop, I put for you here like a snippet of code. It's wrong. Like, let me put it here. Like here, it's before update for the trigger. This code is looping through the trigger new, and you'll see here between the curly brackets of the for loop, we have a so-called statement to get a list of opportunities. And then for each opportunity, we are looping and we are updating the name and we are updating it within the for loop. So that's what we are talking about that can like increase the chances of like hitting the limits or having an issue. Instead, you can have something written like that. Again, we are not talking about having the trigger handler here, just I'm focusing on the problem of the so-called statement within the for loop. So instead of that, we are getting the opportunities instead of one by one, we are getting all the opportunities linked to the accounts where in trigger.new is the list. So when we are using in the so-called the list here, it will get you the set of the accounts IDs. So it's as if I loop through them one by one, form the set of IDs for the accounts, and then I'm getting those opportunities. And we got the opportunities per account, and then we are updating them or updating the names for them. We're adding the updated opportunities in a list, and then we'll update it outside the for loop. So that's what we mean about like avoiding having a so-called or a DML within the for loops, because that will pose you a high probability to hit the governor limit, especially if we are doing like a data loader or a bulk insert or bulk update. So yeah, those are the best practices that I wanted to refresh your memory with. Some of them we discussed before when we were talking about triggers. I would say for next time, before next time, if you can do the homework, play with the trigger, get the sense of the trigger handler, how to write it, how to write the methods. I can share with anyone who wants like a template for the trigger handlers with all the methods that you can have, like handle before insert, before update, before delete. And that will have like the context variables that you can use for that for each operation, if that would help you. But again, the documentation is always available. It's good to get used to read it. I can share this with you on Slack, and then if you can work with the example we gave, convert it to trigger handler and convert the logic, clean it, play with private methods or keep the logic in public and test the operations, that would be great. Next time, it will be on the 16th of January. We'll start a new topic. It's the Apex testing, writing unit test classes. It's not a happy topic for everyone. Not everyone love it, but it's very essential and it's very good to understand how to do it. We'll start small, and maybe in the future we'll add more content on, for example, creating the mock results for HTTP callout and stuff like that. But for now, we'll take it slowly, simple, make it easy to understand and understand together the importance of doing it, because it's very essential, not just for code coverage and deployment, but for kind of automated testing and have a peace of mind that your code is working as expected. So thank you so much for joining the session and for watching the session if you're watching online. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, we can end the session for today, and I will see you on the 16th of January, and happy holidays. Any questions? I'm checking the chat. We are good there. Okay. I will stop the recording and I will be with you for a couple of minutes. If you need my help with something offline as well, I'll be here. Thank you again and happy holidays.